think that I have it muted, but I will mute it. Yeah, had a really nice walk today. I walked to Midtown Global Market to have lunch with Radio Pal, and that was fun.
Cool.
It's like 1 mile exactly. So it was just, it's like 20 minutes. The sidewalks are sketch right now. It's like way different than last winter. Like last winter, it was not like this at all, but it was very generally easy to walk every day. Not an easy winter for walking.
No, it's all frozen and then snow on top of the ice, and
and then rain, and
everyone should stay in for at least 2 months. That's what I say.
I concur. At least 2 months. Yeah. Well, welcome to Next Level from Level with Emily. I host the podcast Level with Emily, in which I interview composers usually about the music they make for video games. And then producer Sam Keenan. Hello, Sam.
Hello.
Makes it sound really nice. So more or less, I mean, that's a oversimplification of your duties.
You said duties.
Mostly I just want to, I know. So this week was interesting because in like the best ways, because the soundtrack is composed and performed by an early music ensemble, which is really awesome and not normal at all in the game world. So their name is the Alkemie Early Music Ensemble, or just Alkemie Early Music Ensemble. And they're from Brooklyn or just New York City. Or at least that's where they're based. They're not necessarily all from there, but right. That's where they live and work and make music together. And hipsters, so I interviewed two and so I interviewed two of the founders, Tracy Cowart and Sean Ricketts, and it was just great to talk to those two. I just loved it. So, we're just going to chat this fine day about, what we thought of the episode, and it'll drop on Friday. Mm-hmm. I also did get a robust guest playlist from them that I will share with patrons tomorrow. So that's exciting too.
Cool.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Tell me what you think of the music for Pentiment, the game Pentiment.
Super fun. This episode is super fun. And it is, like you're saying, it's very different from usual. It's a good example of how eclectic and interesting game music is.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, maybe just for people who don't know, if you could just explain a little bit what early music ensemble means.
Yeah, I realized I never really got to that in the episode. But I mean, we kind of do. We dance around it like the whole time.
It makes sense in context in the episode, but just
true that. So Pentiment itself is set in the 16th century. So like it's like 1523, the year 1520 something around there. And the character you play is, I think they called them illuminists. And basically, if you've ever seen text that is highly decorated and beautifully, whether it's calligraphy or just ornamented with beautiful art around the side and it's text, that's, I think, what illuminists did, or whatever they called them. I don't know. I didn't play the game. This was a hot tip from a radio colleague who loved this game, and many people loved this game. It's from Josh Sawyer, who is from Obsidian Entertainment. And I know you asked me what early music is. So
okay, you're getting there.
Yeah. And he's just always had this dream to make a game that's like historically accurate. And what's interesting is, and one of the things that I love that Sean and Tracy both talk, and I think it's Sean she says something like, you see these huge, historically these period films or period TV shows that are set in these times, and they have these beautifully like hand beaded costumes and everything. And then you hear the music and it's completely anachronistic,
right,
to everything.
Yeah.
And I guess, to be fair, you can pretend to make early music that would fool a lot of people, right?
Almost
But
everybody,
they don't even
myself, maybe.
But they don't even try to do that, so it's just interesting. And these two women, Sean and Tracy, are both like PhDs in early music performance, and I think have multiple degrees in addition to that with regards to historical performance practice and things around that. So I mean, this is like completely their wheelhouse. And so essentially pre 1600, the year 1600 is considered a pretty important dividing line, or right around that year, in terms of music as we understand it today and what we understand as tonality in Western classical music. And that basically started right around the year 1600. And then later, toward the middle of the 1600s, and especially by the time we're getting to around 1700, everything is very what we call tonal. Everything is based upon, what we call the circle of fifths, and everything harmonically, mathematically works out really, really well, based off of certain physical, like physics aspects of how sound and music work, and to the Western ear. And so it's like, before that happened, I mean, there are just so many reasons that change happened. There weren't a lot of people on the planet. There just weren't, compared to now. And, like music traveled much more slowly back then. Centuries could go by without a ton of changes, just because of, instruments that were in circulation, or whatever the church is saying is legal musically, or whatever. So all of these things play a role. And, when you think about early music, or when I think about early music, I think, okay, tonally, it's going to have a different sound, because they're basing music off of a different understanding of how notes relate to one another, and what notes mean. And all of those things were just understood differently then. So it's going to sound different. It's going to have a different resolution system, and all these kinds of things that you would expect to hear as a listener are not going to be there. And then completely on top of that is then all the just quote unquote, weird instruments that weren't around, or that were around then that aren't around now, or were basically like the grandparents of the instruments that we have now. So you hear Sean talk about how she plays the shawm, which is a double reeded instrument that sort of sounds like a cross between an oboe and an English horn, but in an old fashioned way, so it's just a very different, I mean, it's a very distinct difference, instrumentation and tonality. And then rhythms, I mean, all kinds of things. They taught, Sean also again talks briefly about, how musicians of the time thought of things in twos and threes, and how that's just not how we do it now at all. We think in like long phrase lengths. We're not thinking in like beat literally like 2 or 3 eighth notes, or 2 or 3 pulses basically. And they thought of meter in a completely different way. And I mean, just really it's just not like music now. So early music ensembles, well, and the other important thing is most of it's not written down. So these are all, just educated inferences by scholars that are trying to figure out what the rest of this music might have sounded like, or, these fragments here, those fragments there. For ancient Greece, there's no extant music from Greek times. So that's all guesses based off of, documentation and writings and treatises and whatnot.
They were busy philosophizing.
Yeah, they were busy like trying to figure shit out and figure out how to have a really good time and still not be horrible people. So I mean, it's just a fascinating time in music, really, because there's so much that is just kind of being, uncovered through educated guesses and piecing things together, and they specialize in that stuff. So the music, of course, for Pentiment being set in the 1500s, and Alkemie Early Music Ensemble, they study music that goes back hundreds of years before even that. So, they're well versed in many centuries of medieval and pre-Renaissance type music. and it's just really, they're all multi-instrumentalists, you know, many of them are really fine singers. And so they just had a lot of fun, like bringing in their instruments, lots of, you know, recorders, but like professionally made wooden recorders, not like the plastic ones we had in first grade or whatnot. And just interesting plucked instruments, strummed instruments, bowed instruments. Yeah, it's such a delight to hear that soundtrack. So, okay. That's my
cool. That's no, exactly. It's super fun, and it's really a great sound. And I love different kinds of instruments like that, and old instruments are so neat. And you know, we get stuck so much in, you know, guitars and synthesizers and stuff these days. It's like, it's really cool to hear people who know what they're doing playing interesting old instruments and stuff. And it makes me want to make instruments when I hear stuff like that.
Right.
Like, I want to make an instrument, you know?
I know. Yeah. I mean, just get some strings in a wooden box and you're halfway there.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's like,
exactly.
It's not that complex, or a stick and a desk or something. But I know what you mean. I just, it's a great soundtrack. I lost my train of thought there, but yeah,
the other thing about it too, I was just going to say, is it is a really fun conversation, and the two of them are great. It easily could have gone another hour.
Oh, I know. And I had to go to work. Oh, that was the worst. I mean, and it was just like, oh man. Yeah, I was really bummed because I was very excited to speak to them about Hildegard von Bingen, who, you know, we don't need to get into here, but she was a fascinating character from medieval times. Like, I don't remember what year. I really do. I should know. And I feel like a failure for not remembering that right off the top of my head. But she was like, not just a musician, but also like a philosopher and a scholar and a, you know, like kind of a holy figure of the day, but also wrote a ton of music. And there is one of her pieces on there, and they love her music, and they all know a lot about it. And I really wanted to dig into that too. So it was unfortunate, but it was like, what, an hour 10 or something like that, hour 5.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we got a little bit of a late start because of some technical issues, which is a super bummer, big bummer. And then, yeah, I had to go to work, and it's just so bummed. I was like, I have to stop now. I have to stop like now, like,
yeah.
So, but hopefully they'll do it again. Oh, that's the thing that I also loved learning about them, is that, yeah, they've been performing for, you know, I assume, well, I think since the early 2010s or something like that, they formed the group, or maybe it's been around for like 10 years or something like that. And they'd never recorded themselves before, because that's just not crazy. What they were doing. That's not who they were. You know what I mean? And so Josh Sawyer's like, will you make this soundtrack for this amazing game? And they're like, yes, we just need to learn how to like record. And then COVID and all this stuff. And so there was quite a learning curve, I think, for them to like figure out how to get good, clean recordings of themselves. And you know, they talk about struggling with that, and then finding a really good rhythm and finding a good solution for that. And so that was cool. But I'm just like, oh my God, because the recording itself sounds amazing. Like, I think the music sounds great. And
it does.
And one of the things I love is that there's this one part where Sean talks about playing with herself. Like, she talks about these beautiful recorders that she has handmade, and how, you know, when you're a recorder player, you have like a whole set or a full consort. And so you have the soprano recorder, so the little tiny high one, all the way down to the big bass recorder. And you ideally would want that from the same person, because they all sound, then they're like the same family of recorders. And she has that. And of course, she never played them simultaneously, right, in a concert or anything. And so for Pentiment, she was able to, like, you know, she'd record one line with one recorder, and then she'd record the accompaniment to herself. And she was just like, loved hearing them play together, you know. And what I love about the way they recorded it is that I could hear that. I could hear what she was talking about. And so if you listen to the clip that I put after she's talking about that, you'll hear those you'll hear two recorders playing, and that's her, and, you know, overdubbing herself, and it's just this rich, warm, God, I love a good sounding recorder. You know, it's just this beautiful, it's such a simple sound.
It's got such a vocal quality to it that I think that's part of the reason why it's like hits so hard, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But, it's just such a great sounding,
I
soundtrack.
think part of the reason why it sounds good is because groups like that and musicians like that, it tends to usually be like jazz groups and stuff, people who they make themselves sound good not thinking about recording, you know, as opposed to like a rock band, just everybody just turns their amp up as loud as they can get away with, and they count on the mixing person to do the work, you know. You can tell the musicians are listening to each other and feeding off each other and making a sound as a team, you know.
Yeah, and she said that how they realized they would get the best, they were getting the best results when they were together, playing together. So, you know, I just realized I can play music for you.
Oh yeah, you should play something.
Yeah, Sacha is here, and she's right. Kindergarten kids tend to ruin recorders for many. That is so true. And it wasn't until I got into classical radio that I realized there were professional recorder players. I was like, what the?
Like,
who would want to hear that? And then you hear it and you're like, oh, that's what they're supposed to be like. They're just amazing, you know?
Yeah.
But let's see. I mean, oh man, it's such a good soundtrack. And I really like the variety in it, even though, you know, it's early music. And so it's this one type of sound. Obviously, back then there were many different purposes for music, you know, whether they be for sacred settings or secular, you know, dances or celebrations that are festive or something like that. So, and there's all of it is on here. It's really, really great. I guess, well, let's start with the Hildegard von Bingen track, only because then you can be like, oh, this is legit. This is real. This is from 1098 to 1179. That's the other thing. She lived for a long time. I did remember that. But yeah, 1098
they didn't even
to
have
1179. They did not have Spotify back then, Sam. All right. So the music might take a second to kick in, but it will kick in.
Are you hearing it?
You're not hearing it?
Nope.
Nothing.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Well, Sacha doesn't hear it either. Bummer.
I bet it's coming through now.
Okay. Oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things too that's very prominent in this soundtrack in particular, and in a lot of early music, is the drone. Like there's a drone underneath that's just hangs out, and then everything happens above it. Sometimes some cases below it, but you hear it almost. It starts almost every track. There's just an instrument that'll be like, and then it'll just like the song will start, you know. So let me see if I can find that. And that's how this song had started to. Yeah, we're gonna work on trying to make the music be more responsive right off the bat.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that when we go back into the YouTube video after this, it's there. So it's just weird.
Yeah.
All right. So let me see. Here's one I really liked too.
When you start, yeah.
Yeah. one of my favorite things about music like that is that you can, and the same is true well into the classical era and into the romantic era with salon music and any kind of chamber music, which means just a small group of people playing together. And you can hear that kind of joy in this whole soundtrack, where it's just like this group of people, just whatever instruments they have laying around. And that's another thing they talk about in the interview, is they explain, a lot of this music that even does exist doesn't tell you what instrument it's for, because it was for whatever the fuck instrument they had. It was just like, so you get that vibe from this music, this freedom, this like interplay, and this just kind of the joy of performing together. And that's something that certainly outside of the sacred part of medieval music, you definitely hear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you have any track? Because I know you really liked listening to the soundtrack too. Did you have anything in particular that you wanted to
I
get heard?
I didn't write down any names or anything, so I'm not going to remember. But
there's a lot of beautiful singing as well.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, is that one thing that I thought was neat was some of the singing and that style, and the style they recorded it in and mixed it and stuff is pretty loose, which is good for this kind of music. Like the dynamics are very wide,
Yes.
And that's it's good to turn it up loud.
Yeah.
Also good, if anybody's got a Renfest coming up or something like that,
Yeah, exactly.
Pump that stuff loud.
I know.
That's good for
Renfest.
Yeah,
yes.
Tailgating party. Renfest tailgating. Just pump that music.
It might go over well here at a Vikings game, honestly.
Yeah.
Some early Viking music. But Sacha has a good question. She says, is the idea behind chamber music that all the musicians can fit in a single chamber? And yes, that's basically the idea. Now, it gets a little trickier when you start talking about a chamber orchestra, but that in that case, and this kind of stands for all chamber music, is generally believed to mean it's one player on a part. So instead of a giant symphony orchestra where you might have, 30 first violins, a chamber orchestra might only have 10 or something. Right. So it's just a smaller group, and, you're going to have one oboe, one flute, with many exceptions. So don't quote me on that for sure. But it just means a smaller, gathering. So duets, trios, quartets, quintets, septets, sextets, all of that stuff is chamber music. Yeah.
So. And what happens with that, just for listening, or for when you're listening to that kind of music, that's different from a big orchestra, is you don't have that kind of lush chorus happening with a single instrument. It's way more intimate, and you can hear the performance of players more, and it is smaller, so it sounds smaller.
Yeah. And salon music is basically the same thing. It's just kind of sort of what they ended up calling it in the Romantic era. So, because they had salons where they would all get together and talk about literature, and then they'd play music together, or they'd play piano for each other or something like that. But it was kind of a whole experience. So,
right. It's not what they play at my salon.
Yeah. I totally need a haircut too. It's going to happen. I'm going to have to do it myself, and then that'll give it time. So if I really mess it up, it'll give it time to like grow out so that my lady can fix it before the convention. So I think I'm probably going to hack away at it tomorrow. We'll see.
No mullets in the 12th century either. Actually, I guess we don't know that, do we?
We don't know. Yeah. Maybe that's where they originated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's how that all started. Hildegard von Bingen rocking the OG mullet in the 12th century.
I want to see that movie.
Right? There are a lot of resources to learn about her. I mean, for whatever she's left behind, but yeah. So Pentiment, yes, awesome game. It's a 2D. I don't even think I explained what it is, but 2D adventure RPG, narrative, very narratively based, with fonts that change depending on the status of the person, which is pretty cool too. So Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, you got a nice compliment about your badass beard.
Well, I can't take all the credit. There's a team of specialists that
Yeah.
work on this beard.
I remember for the employee cabaret at NPR many, 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 many years ago now. It was like would have been in like 2009 or no, it probably was 2010s or something like that. And you guys all shaved into mustaches.
Oh yeah.
And that's the only time I've ever seen you without. And then by 2 days later, you had it back or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just shaved this morning.
So yeah. All right. Well, do you want to say anything else about Pentiment or Alkemie early music ensemble? Ooh, I do want to say one important thing is that everyone who signs up for their mailing list can get a free EP, which is really awesome. And it's great. I got it like immediately. It's 4 tracks of a live concert, and it's their website is Alkemie. I think it's alkemie.org, and it's Alkemie. It's in the title of the video and stuff, how to spell alchemy. It's not the traditional way. It's like the old timey way or whatever the hell. So
the other funny thing I was going to mention about this episode is just that the two of them sound almost exactly the same.
Yes.
Which is a little weird. But and there's a couple times throughout listening to the episode where, that's like, you can't, it's not obvious who's talking, or one of them will answer the other one and it sounds like the same person talking to themselves or something like
exactly.
That. It was weird.
And because I didn't notice that at all when I spoke to them, because of course I talked to them like I'm talking to you now, where I saw them. And then when I was putting the episode together, I was like, oh my God, these ladies sound almost the same, which is that's just not very common,
Yeah.
And the other thing too is Sean had COVID when we did the interview.
Oh,
so she was not 100%. She was much better, but she was not 100%. So who knows if whatever. But
it's a fun episode and
it's
a
awesome.
cool conversation, and and it just I said this before, but it just highlights how diverse the music can get in
people take risks
in games and stuff. And and it's so fun that game companies will have the intelligence and bravery to like put money and time and effort behind somebody doing that legit, somebody doing that the right way.
For the first time ever, and they'd never done it before. And they're like, we believe in you. We've heard you play live or whatever it is. I mean, they just, it's a beautiful thing, because I cannot imagine that happening on a primetime network television show. So it's such a special thing.
People holding the torch for carrying on, the history of music and doing things that are not so easily monetized and all that kind of stuff. It's like,
these people are the real deal. They're the professional musicians hustling and just grant writing and writing books, and they're doing that hustle, and it's really cool. So I endorse it wholeheartedly. And you can buy it. I can't quite. Oh, I bought it on Steam. That's where I bought the soundtrack. So I don't know what their plans are for future releases, but for now it's on Steam, and it was $10. So it's the one thing that bums me out about buying it. What I like about buying it from Bandcamp is I can pay what I want to pay. And so if it's like $8, I'm always like, well, fuck it, I'll give them 10. Or if it's $10, I'll give them 15 or whatever, But when you buy it on Steam and Amazon, of course, those are set prices. So that's but it's still, it's nice. You can buy it. And of course, it's in all the places. I know for sure it's on Spotify. So if you want to listen to it there, you can. Join us on Discord to talk about this and other episodes. That link is down in the show notes, and subscribe to this channel and
become a patron. There's some fun awesome. Patron only merch
tomorrow night, hopefully.
Yeah. Coming your way if you're a patron, and if you're not, you can be.
You sure can. We welcome you to be. All right. Well, Sammy Keenan, I will see you tomorrow. We're going to work on that merch thing tomorrow. And everyone else will be back next week. I don't have any Wednesday shifts unless something happens and the dominoes fall. We will be here at the same time, 3 p.m. Central, which is 9 p.m. GMT for now. Although next week is daylight saving time. So this weekend is. So
It is?
yeah, this weekend we spring forward.
No.
So Sunday, the sunset will be an hour later, which is a beautiful thing that happens in Minnesota. It'll be dark till 9 a.m. or something,
Right.
but at least we'll have a later sunset.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you want to say, Sam?
I don't think so. Just hi, Sasha.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Sasha. Thanks for interacting with us as always. And
makes us feel seen.
all right. Well, peace out.
Peace out.
All right. I'm going to